You only have one life to live, so get the most out of it. On Good Life, Great Life, join me, Brian Highfield, and my guests as we share success stories, habits, mindsets, and lessons learned by successful people. These lessons are not taught in schools, but are critical for getting ahead in life. Whether you want a successful business or career, optimal health, or a lifestyle that most people just dream of, Good Life, Great Life has you covered. After retiring from a successful corporate career in my 40s, I founded multi-million-dollar businesses in the sports and healthcare arenas. Now, I help everyday people maximize their lives and speak regularly at seminars, on podcasts, and radio shows to share principles on the topics of health, wealth, and happiness. Don't let a good life get in the way of a great life. Join me today on Good Life, Great Life. Well, welcome to another episode of Good Life, Great Life. And I have with us on the program, Sarah Turner. Welcome to the program, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Awesome. Well, we want to get to know you a little bit. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you want to become an entrepreneur in the first place?
Oh man, it's funny. I always laugh when people ask that question because it was not cute, not glamorous. It was pretty rough, honestly. I had, through a series of events, just really came to the conclusion that I was like, I don't really think I'm meant for the 9-to-5 life. I work hard, and I saw the trajectory of my life that I was going to have to go get multiple higher education degrees, be in more debt, and still see a minimal increase in my paycheck. But also, I don't know, I just worked hard, and I felt like it was not ever celebrated or even appreciated. So I felt very taken advantage of, and also super stuck. So that was I dipped my toes in, started a little event planning business, started content writing, just kind of tried to see how I could make it work. And then very quickly shifted into copywriting. So, I am a freelance copywriter, and now I also teach people how to become freelance copywriters and leave their 9-to-5. So people who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs, those are my homies.
Yeah. So, well, here's an interesting question I like to ask all the guests is do you feel that entrepreneurs are kind of born with an entrepreneur gene, or do you think anyone can really become an entrepreneur?
That is one of the most harmful pieces of misinformation I actually think that's out there. Because I often looked at the things we associate with entrepreneurship and was well, that's not me. And that's what I think prevented me from feeling like I could even claim the word entrepreneur, because for a long time I was real comfortable with a freelancer, but not business owner, not entrepreneur. And I'm not risk taking. I don't really, I don't really like to I don't know, you hear the stories of the entrepreneurs, right. I lost $1 million.
Yeah. Do you see those people on Shark Tank all the time where they mortgaged their house and they took out a second mortgage to fulfill their dream and just going deeper and deeper in debt?
Seriously, that always terrified me. And I was that's not who I am. And so it didn't resonate with me. And I really have come to believe through my own life, and then also through working with people who are starting their very first businesses, that so much of what it means to be an entrepreneur can be cultivated. A lot personal development work is essential as an entrepreneur. And the great thing is when you're an entrepreneur, you can put that first. You don't have to get home from your 9-to-5 and be exhausted and try to improve your life bit by bit. But yeah, so I think that one, it can be cultivated, but two, entrepreneurship is just so much more accessible than it's ever been before. So you don't need to be the have a ton of venture capital and be super risk taking. And there's so many ways to kind of ease into it. And that's usually how I explain that to people. I'm you can just slide into entrepreneurship a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to be a giant, mortgage your house situation.
Right.
It sounds terrifying to the average person. So
yeah, and a lot of people they think that's what they have to do. They think, okay, I've got to go back to school and spend a lot of money for an advanced degree, or I need to open a business where I need a lot of capital to, whether it be a store, a restaurant, or something like that. or buy a franchise. And there's, like you said, there's tons of opportunities out there that require very little capital.
Totally. And it's changing. Like, I just feel like it's important for us to remember that, like, because of how fast technology is changing, like, new opportunities are popping up like every day. And it's so important to like keep your eyes open and to have an open mind, because it's just the world is shifting and changing so fast. So yeah.
Yeah. And so, a lot of, how do people, I mean, how do it, you, like you said, you have to be open-minded. You have to kind of look for these things. You can't be boxed into the traditional, like opening a brick and mortar store or buying a franchise. But what are some of those opportunities that are out there for people? What are their options?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a ton, but I'm definitely in the world of digital marketing, so I can speak more readily to like that world. But I mean, there's so much, honestly. Like, in the world of digital marketing, you know, you can be in graphic design, virtual assistant, social media management, copywriting. I'm a big fan of, obviously. And you can start your own like online store. I mean, I was just like looking at TikTok, which I never do. There was like this live feed situation. I was like scrolling through, and all these people were monetizing the videos that they were doing. So people were getting paid to like literally the weirdest thing I've ever seen. They were like harvesting pearls out of oysters in the shape of crosses, and people were bidding on them. And I was just like, what? And I always love to tell the story of my best friend, Emily, who actually have a podcast with. She had a really rough point in her life. Her mom had just passed away, and she has two little girls, and saw that there was this huge trend with slime. And everybody was like freaking out about slime. It was like an ASMR thing, but nobody was making it. And so her and her girls started making slime and selling it on Instagram. And like within 5 months, they were having like 10K months. And I was just like, what?
Yeah, what's happening?
It's like, so the world is changing so fast, and you can make money in so many ways. I actually think that's also like like millennials especially were told to like really pair your career with your passion. And I think it kind of stressed us out, and freaked us out a little bit, because we put so much pressure on ourselves, equating like, okay, my career has to be the like number one thing I'm most passionate about. And I think that's actually not helpful, because there's so many different weird ways to like make money, that sometimes the way you make money can just be the way you make money, and it can free up time to go do your passion. So I think that's also like a really unhelpful thing that, I don't know. I definitely grappled with that.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the traits, you know, that you see people, what do they really need to have or develop in order to be successful as an entrepreneur?
I really think actually, and all of this can be cultivated. I really believe that. But I think so much of what I see is actually people need to really focus on growing their sense of self-trust and their sense of self-worth. Because I often see people as they grow as an entrepreneur, like those are like kind of the two main things I see people grappling with. Because I know that there's, especially among women, there's a lot of like shame in wanting more for yourself, which is interesting, because those are the people that I'm like, we need you like thriving and not surviving, because you're the ones who like give back and have big hearts and things like that. And then really, I feel like entrepreneurship is a journey in like growing your sense of self-trust. So maybe you start by just like having one client, and you deliver on time and they're happy, and you're like, okay, I can do this with a second client. And you do it again and again and again. And like, that's how like, I think businesses are really built, is through this growing sense of self-trust. As you like add to your skill sets, because the answers to all of your problems are out there, right? Like all the problems you can come up against, you can find those solutions now, because of the internet, because of YouTube, because of mentorships. So
yeah, and that's interesting, because like you said, I run into the same thing where people just don't believe in themselves. And I think a contributor to that is a lot of people want instant success. Like, you know, they just want that hit. They go out, they start making $1 million, and that just does not happen typically. That's not typical results.
Right. It's like whenever we watch, movies, like, all the Rocky movies, like the thing that makes a champion is skipped over. We make it into montages because it's boring. It's not sexy. It's him like eating 3 healthy meals a day and going on a run. And we're like, well, that's lame. Let's chop that up into like the smallest little bit possible. This is not the sexy stuff, right? But that's like literally where all the work is. That's where like champions are made. That's where, millionaires are made. And for me, that's reassuring, honestly, because you're like, once you know that, you're like, it's not some like magic secret. It's just consistent action over time.
Yeah, right. I think that's such an important point for people because, again, instant success is not typical. Typical is putting in effort, like you say, consistently over a long period of time to build that up. And I always think of that iceberg picture that people post talking about, we just see the tip, we see the success, we don't see all the work and sacrifices that go into it.
It's so true. It's so true. And again, like sometimes you can look at that and think, okay, well, that's daunting. But if you just remember that it's like actually really simple, that's what makes it, I think, reassuring, and also I really think it's important to remember that like one of my favorite images comes from this book called The Slight Edge, where he talks about how we're always off course and how to get to the moon, like Apollo rocket ship was off course like 95% of the time. And it's just constantly course correcting. And I love that image because if you think of like your life and entrepreneurship like that, it takes a lot of pressure off, right? You just imagine that like, you're never, and I mean, I can speak for myself, like I'm never fully like right on track. I'm always like trying the next thing. Okay, that kind of worked. Now I need to adjust. And you're just kind of course correcting as you go. And I just think that's really helpful because it just alleviates a lot of pressure to like get it right.
Yeah.
Which is an impossibility.
Because a lot of people come in, okay, they got a plan, but they gotta adjust the plan. Like no one goes from A to B according really to their original plan. So like you said, they always have to make those small course corrections.
I've actually stopped making really big plans.
Yeah.
I've been like, I have what I call like a North Star. Like I'll be like that one day I would love like that. Right. But I know that between now and then there's a lot going on. So like, what's the next step for the next 3 months, the next 6 months? Maybe I'll have like a little bit of a plan for even the year, but I never really plan beyond a year anymore.
I think that's smart because I think like 90-day cycles are kind of they keep it small and help keep people on track. If you've got a 1-year goal and they're not consistent with it, then of course they're going to miss it. But they set out a goal 90 days in advance. I think they're much more likely to hit it.
Totally. 90 days is my favorite because that you can get what you can do in 90 days and the impact it can have on your business is really profound. And it doesn't feel so daunting. And it gives you that flexibility to course correct. So it's like, yeah, I totally agree. It's my favorite.
So what else? So I mean, you work with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of other things that the characteristics or traits that they need to develop within themselves?
Again, I think I always because I had such a hang up around, seeing the list of traits to be an entrepreneur, kind of held me small. I'm always hesitant to go that direction. I think that there's a lot of traits that people think are not helpful that are super helpful. I mean, especially what comes to mind for me with copywriting is empathy, and in marketing and marketing messaging, like some of the best copywriters I've worked with are some of the most empathetic. And I think that that's often considered like a not helpful trait in the world of business because businesses before now, it was much more in a hardcore, grind, hustle, push back on your fears, just kind of muscle your way through it. And I think there's a lot more space in the world of entrepreneurship for empathy and connection and compassion. And I think people are craving it, honestly, from businesses and brands, right? You see people want to know, what does your brand stand for? If I'm going to buy from you, what are you doing to give back to the world? And I think that's a really important shift that I think people aren't necessarily noticing, or at least the old school idea of like what an entrepreneur looks like, isn't appealing to a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and I think it ties into the business's story, because people really do business with someone that's got a great story to tell, and I think things that are very popular right now, and social responsible of sustainability and things like that. I think I see more and more businesses weaving those into their story to attract more customers.
totally. And I think that, yeah. And so I work with a ton of moms, like a ton of moms. And they're in a particular situation. Oftentimes they're looking into entrepreneurship because they maybe just had a baby, and they're like looking at their life and they're like, I don't really want to work 9 to 5. I don't want to not be working, because I do enjoy the intellectual stimulation. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy like contributing to the household financially. And so there's just a big need for more flexibility, especially among like women who are having children.
Mhm.
And entrepreneurship provides that for a lot of people. But again, they come into it and they're like, yeah, but I'm not really an entrepreneur, because like they think like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and they're like, I'm not like that. I don't want to make it. I don't want to make $1 billion. I don't want to like make rocket ships. I just want to like provide a really good life for my family and not be working 40 hours a week, and like still be contributing meaningfully to the world.
Right.
And I think that's really beautiful. And I love working with people like that, because the system as it stands is like not set up to support those kinds of people. And they're hard workers. Like they work hard. They have a big why, their family, their life. So it's just, I don't know. It's about like finding creative solutions, I think, too.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen that with kind of the great resignation here, and with COVID, people are forced to work from their homes, and they got a good taste of what it would be like to do that, and people liked it. They don't want to be stuck in traffic, or be clocking in or pretending to work at their cubicle or whatever. They like that balance, and I think that we're seeing that such a surge in people that are used to that, and so they're leaving their jobs and seeking something that's going to give them that work-life balance.
Yeah, I actually really think that the whole like time-based compensation model is like super outdated.
Mm-hmm.
My team works on a task-based model. So if they finish their tasks at their day or for the week, like go have fun with your friends and family, And so none of us work 40-hour work weeks. I'm very anti-hustle. And it works so much better, because think about it. It's like, if you have like these tasks to get through, and once you finish them, you can go like spend the rest of your day with your kids, your spouse, like whoever, go see a friend. You're going to work so much more efficiently. Whereas like, everybody knows that experience, working the 9 to 5, where like the last 2 hours of the day, you're twiddling your thumbs, talking to your coworker about what you watched on Netflix. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, I think you're right. I think the traditional model is outdated. It's a dinosaur, and we've been seeing that shift, I think, for a long time, but now I think it's starting to accelerate, and I think COVID really helped that.
Because people are starting to realize that their most precious resource is their time.
Yeah,
it's like you make more time, and so they're all seeing like all the time that's being like lost commuting, for example. I was like always pretty anti-commuting, even when I had like a 9 to 5. I was like, oh my gosh, like people who drive like an hour to work. I'm like, no, that's so much
Yeah, one of my mentors one time, he told me the story where he went to his kids. It was a school event, like a oh gosh, where they talking like a road. I'm thinking road trip, but that's not right.
Well, a field trip.
Field trip, thank you. A field trip for a school. So he wanted to go with his child, and he was the only dad. Everybody else was moms on there. And I love that story, because I wanted to be that guy, because I was still working in the corporate world, and I'm like, gosh, I want to be the only dad on a school bus with my kids, and so that inspired me. But did you have a mentor that really has helped you, or maybe several mentors?
I've had a few mentors, and so I mean, some of my favorite like minds are I really love Joe Polish. I don't know if you know him. He's in like the world marketing. He's just very much has a big emphasis on giving back. His like life gives to the givers, like one of his like philosophies. So very, very philanthropic in like building his businesses, but also like not to a point of martyrdom, right? Like definitely like not afraid to make good money, which I think is also really important too, because I know we all have a little bit of a money mindset, usually that we have to work through when we're becoming entrepreneurs. I'm like blanking. I also really appreciate Sam Ovens. It's funny because he's like very the opposite of kind of how I like to like operate in the world, but he speaks some like really core truths that I like. And then, yeah, I'm like trying to think. I'm blanking. I wish I had known that question beforehand because there's some, and I know I'm like,
and I guess talk a little bit about the importance of mentorship and where people can go to really find a good mentor.
Okay, I think mentorship is like the way. Like I think most people should skip college and go straight into mentorship, like truly, because that is like the fastest way to get real life experience and feedback and challenge your mindset and grow. And usually it's a fraction, if it's a paid mentorship, it's a fraction of the cost of like college or university. And anytime I've invested in a mentor, I come out the other side with like way more experience. And the thing is I think it's important for people. Well, one, you can find mentors like pretty readily online. Kristen Johnson. I knew I was forgetting. She was like another beautiful mentor of mine. Finding people online is a good way. I mean, literally like go down a YouTube rabbit hole, go down an Instagram rabbit hole. The algorithms are going to start showing you more of the same. So that's one good thing about the algorithms. But I just think mentorship is huge. And the point that I was going to say is that sometimes ask, like the person you might want to mentor under might not have like a mentorship they're promoting online, but ask. Like I was just talking with someone and she wants to go into interior design and her background's in marketing. And she's like thinking about going back to school. I was like, no, go to an interior designer whose business model you respect and you want to emulate. Say that's what you want to do. You want to study under them, and then tell them about the value you're going to bring them, i.e. your marketing experience, right? You have so much to offer this person, and present it as a mentorship. Like, I would like to be your mentee. Here's why, but also like value first, right? Like, here's how I'm going to help you. And she did it. And now she's like, this person wasn't offering a mentorship. She went out, had that conversation, and she was like, I have a mentor. And that's an option too. Like, they don't have to have like a mentorship program. You can absolutely ask somebody to mentor you.
Yeah, I think that's a novel idea, instead of, because people think, oh, I got to go back to school to learn something, but there's people out there that already know it and been doing it for years. Just go ask them.
Listen, they're doing it in the real world. Anytime I hear somebody that they're going to university for like digital marketing, especially, I'm like, oh no, because that's the time it takes for university to like integrate back into their syllabus, like what's changed in digital marketing is not like, that's going to take so much time. And it is a living, breathing thing. It is fast moving. It's changing constantly. And that's another reason why I love mentorships and believe in mentorships. It's like,
it reminds me of a funny story. One of my business partners, I mean, he never went to high school, and he was talking business with a college professor one time, and the college professor's like, you know what, why should I even believe you? You never even went to high school. And the guy looked at him and he says, well, I know what you make as a professor, and I can tell you I make twice that. and the professor just kind of sit back in their chair and like, you got a point there.
Well, also, like, I don't know if this professor was a lifelong professor, but a lot of professors are career professors. Didn't go out and have a career in the field that they teach. And like, I'm not knocking on professors here,
right.
But, like, you can also like, you can learn from somebody who's like literally like in the trenches, or learn from somebody who's like studied theory. And to me, 9 times out of 10, obviously there are exceptions where you should definitely go to college. We don't need surgeons who are like just figuring it out on YouTube. but for like by and large, I think mentorships are just so valuable, but you have to be more creative about how you find the mentor. It's not cut and dry. It's not going to school. It's not on that prescribed path that most of us grew up thinking was like the right way to do things. So you just have to be a little bit more creative.
Yep. Real quick, you mentioned The Slight Edge as a book. Do you have any other favorites that you would recommend to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Slight Edge is always like my number one recommendation for sure. That's like, love that one.
Great.
I'm sure I do. I just like not off the top of my head.
No, that's fine. There's so many out there that it's hard to think of, Annie.
I have like a whole YouTube video on like books I recommend, but for some reason not coming to me.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, but this has been very informative. But before we go, how can our audience get in touch with you or connect with you and learn more about Sarah Turner?
So obviously my website, officialsarahturner.com. There's a bunch of information there. You'll find links to everything that you would need there. I have a YouTube channel, which is specifically about copywriting, and you would find me there by searching for Sarah Turner. And then Instagram, simply Sarah Turner is the handle. But yeah, you can find me in those 3 places.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us today. This has been great. I love what you talked about, self-trust and self-worth being a barrier, because it's so true for people.
Totally. And it's an ongoing thing. You never figure it out fully. You just get better and better.
That's right. All right. Our guest today has been Sarah Turner. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Good Life, Great Life, brought to you by Brian Highfield. We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's guests and stories. If you like what you've heard, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.